We are all tied up, locked in here. 1-1, LFM versus Simplicity. A tale of two games, but what seems like LFM maybe could be up 2-0, but we do find ourselves 1-1 in this best of 5.
Yeah, Simplicity able to take that Dragon Char game against all macro odds and wave clear odds, it feels like here, and it makes, I feel like, the rest of the series for me a lot more difficult to kind of evaluate, because I expected this, especially after game 1, I was like, I think LFM and what we saw in game 2, I was like, I feel like this is them, you know, should be up the 2-game series here, but purely based on how they played with their draft in game 1, I go, you know, maybe Simplicity has a little bit more left in them than I'm giving them credit for.
Well, their last time they faced off, first 2 maps were Dragon and Volskaya. We'll see exactly where game number 3 will be taking place, because in that last series it was Infernal Shrines. This time, Sky Temple, the LFM battleground of choice. They've picked it 3 times. They're 0-3, but this is against a different team of Simplicity. And you mentioned the macro style. We haven't seen much Abathur consideration yet, but this is one where it definitely comes in on both sides here.
Yeah, I think Abathur's got to be a focus, and then a lot of the rest of the compositions probably should focus around that mid skirmish, around the early Shrine skirmish itself. Both these teams, it shows that the Dragon Char play, I feel like, has highlighted that macro is not the biggest concern, so I don't think we're going to see any major, you know, giant knight rotation or anything. So it is who gains the momentum over that middle skirmish and over eye control here. And draft-wise, I feel like as long as LFM doesn't play too slow, that's my biggest concern, because if we look at their drafts, they've drafted for very slow team fighting. So if we see them bring the skirmish here, I'm excited to see what they have for Sky.
These two teams, I mean, you mentioned Tiger JK on Karazim. If we look around, you know, to other divisions, other leagues, we do see some Karazim play, some potential dive that we have in there. It also brings into mind the Tracer that we saw in the game number 1, because this is a map where Tracer loves open areas, loves open battlegrounds to fight in. This is one where you can really get that to play. But I am curious, as this goes on, the Hanzo, we saw the ban previously. Will we get another Hanzo game? Because obviously that gives you control over the boss, things of that nature. Falstad comes to mind, not just for K1 Pro, but also Hosty. I still remember 2 years ago when we were watching him, I think it was 2 years ago around this time, he was on a team called Vox Nihili, comes in. It was Falstad all day, every day for him. So I think there is some different drafts that we might see come out for either of these teams.
And on that note of like the Hanzo versus the Falstad, I will say that like this is one of the battlegrounds where I really like the Falstad over the Hanzo. It's one of the few. It is a map where boss control can be a problem, but I don't think you should ever draft for boss control. Whereas Kursala with the double boss, how the map objective functions, it makes a lot of, you know, it makes it smart to invest into boss control itself. Whereas in this battleground, winning the skirmishes, Hanzo doesn't have much scatter arrow opportunities, right? Whereas Falstad trades up in 1v1s post 4 pretty well for the most part. And then you still have the global to be really oppressive if you do get that advantage. So we do see that direction. I'd like to see something with the Falstad over that here. But either way, it's going to be, again, a lot about that early skirmishes and then who can maintain the snowball of the structures, as long as there's no Mule in Abathur. But I think we can expect those to get banned out.
This is another map where we've seen teams run it in the past, and you and I touched upon this earlier today, was the Anubarak. This is a map where we've seen heavy dive composition, sometimes too heavy at times, but this has been a battleground historically in North America where if we are going to see the Anubarak, this would be the place.
It is one of the better ones based on that same logic, right? The fight and being able to force the fight, especially with the Cocoon, provides a lot of gank opportunities in the later to mid stages of the game. But it is interesting in the fact that it's been so amiss on some of the other battlegrounds that we expected that I'm almost afraid to say the name anymore. Like North America, we just don't like the bug. You know, we consider them squashed here still. We'll find out though. Bans towards Sergeant Hammer show fear towards the early game macro pressure. That Mayeb ban, I think, is a very smart one from LFM, removing that team fight opportunity in the earlier stages. That was, I felt like, going to be the momentum swing on who won that early skirmish. So taking that off makes it pretty even footing here.
Garnered a lot of respect in game number 1 on Dragon Char. Unlikely to see it, depending on the battleground. As we move forward, Simplicity. First pick, do we get a Urel? Do we get something along the lines of Phoenix? Instead, they are going for that global control of Dahaka. But it does bring to mind the Abathur will be available. Generally, we don't see Abathur-Dahaka pairings as much. Dahaka does do well to counter Abathur, so if LFM had that in mind, maybe not as appealing.
Wonder what LFM would want for a hat target if they do end up going that route in the warrior department. I feel like they would have to be considering the Murden just because Diablo's already been focused. It's one of the better battlegrounds there. I don't think we're looking at the Anubarak hat target. I'm going to avoid it completely. Not look for the counter answer there from LFM. Stick to the Urel Deckard combo. It is interesting the fact that we see it let through. Man, this is one of those one of those places where I get torn mentally, especially coming right off of an Eastern Clash event, right? Like when it comes to the metas where it's like so foreign on some of the thought process and how different it is than we get it at the international level. The fact that, again, Abathur has made his way through, and now I'm like, will he show up?
I'm starting to think maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, which is crazy.
Raynor Muradin, very strong opening part of the draft for Simplicity. You get the great damage dealer, you have the Muradin pick, and what this allows you to do when you have the global control, you have the Raynor, and you have Muradin, you can kind of go into, look, we can flex one of these last picks, obviously the last pick for LFM, but it does give you that Joker pick of, I get to pick and make it whatever I want, because you've already established so much control that you can use it to counter what could potentially come out as Whitemane going to be the ban by LFM, despite the Whitemane showing, again, still trying to gauge and calculate the value that we've seen out of Whitemane so far.
Do end up getting the Abathur, at least at some point throughout the draft. They're banned out by Simplicity, but I agree. I actually find that Whitemane ban really curious. The fact that they aren't willing, or that they're willing to ban it out based on the first 2 games it hasn't had the best success. To me, what that says is there's a synergy they're worried about heavily on the team, on Simplicity side, that it's less about the hero's impact itself on the battleground, because it doesn't make sense comparative to some of the other ones that we've seen and him selected, or her, excuse me. ETC and Hanzo are the rotation here for LFM, though. The Hanzo versus Falstad trade-off comes to light here, and I can't help but feel like, again, my argument's still going to stand, only amplified based on the fact that we have a Falstad, or a Dahaka, excuse me, on the side of Simplicity. Not having that global is not the same as having that boss control.
ETC is an interesting hero in North America, to say the least. Very susceptible to a lot of damage, and a lot of damage can come in the form of a Jaina, as it's going to be paired with the Malfurion, giving that Innervate natural synergy. And now for LFM, what's going to be their second damage dealer? Is it another Tassadar to maybe deal with some of this burst damage? Is it maybe a Zeratul to get to that backline? We're going to find out.
I'd like it to be something to synergize with Yrel armor stacking and Deckard's slow play. Hanzo doesn't have enough reliable DPS with Scatter Arrow build on a battleground like Sky Temple, so I would like to see, I don't know, with Raynor off the table, Vala can't hold in this situation. Li Ming doesn't have the reliable DPS that maybe I would like, but definitely if you get him against a wall, a lot of single target bursts and execution there from LFM.
These drafts feel very pre-Clash to me. It's a matter of, we expect some different things, and certain teams will most definitely be bringing something new. The Whitemane, obviously, that we've seen so far, but outside of that, it feels very pre-Clash to me in terms of these metas. But objectively, they're strong. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Hanzo Li Ming has great blow-up potential. The ETC has kind of been tricky. Again, the Johanna for LFM has been absent. It's just not really their playstyle. But the ETC effectiveness, because he's so susceptible to getting blown up, it has been a concern, I think, a lot. There's not, Raynor's basically your own interrupt, maybe outside of a Twilight Dream, but he could get popped, like, real quick if you get the proper lockdown.
Yeah, we saw Hooligan struggling with that quite a bit at the Eastern Clash. It was a common question a lot of the Western scene had, commentators had asked, where's the Johanna in these type of situations? Why is the ETC always the one that's a go-to over top? Because he seems like he gets made into beef very quickly. You have Yrel with the opportunity to provide a little bit of better armor, but it still does suffer. I still look at that and I go, I'd take a Nubrak in all the situations. That I would rather that over the ETC just for the amount of control, and more importantly, when you have a Li Ming Hanzo comp, you're looking for the kills, and Nubrak sets that up. So we'll see if ETC can prep the team here with Fury and friends in the blue.
When you go in for the kill, are you doing it for the thrill?
Yes. I feel like there was an answer to that I just don't know.
You're hoping I understand?
I was... You got another line. Go ahead, Jay. Hal, hit us with it.
I'll play it for you on the ride home.
All right.
With Simplicity, after a strong game 1 showing, LFM turned it on them in game number 2. They're going to try and run it back here, have great kill potential. If you get the lockdown between a Muradin, stun, and a Malf root, a Raynor Jaina follow-up to all of that can spell doom. And an interesting approach already for LFM. They're not even willing to fight over that first control over the eye, at least momentarily. They'll probably make their way back to it here soon.
Sidon went for a bit more of the patient brush talk too, not going full offensive into the far left shrub with that original initiation. not really that significant, but just things that Dread Brain notes as the game unfolding. It's surprising to use a brush stock offensively, but not as offensively if LFM had answered that. LFM answering towards that kind of choke there over I, and a heavy amount of damage being displayed there on his flops. He is Urel, though. He will be just fine, able to heal up himself pretty comfortably. But a good start there for Simplicity.
I am really curious how these teams are going to approach the camps, because you have anti-siege potential like crazy on the side of Simplicity early game. Post level 4, depending on if Hanzo goes Explosive Arrow, which when we know has a boss on it, tends to be more towards the Scatter Arrow build. How much control these teams are willing to put towards the camps and how much they push with them, to me, is going to be very telling. The one thing that Dahaka does do well against siege camps is you can land the drag, and you can pull one of those into turret range, obviously pre-level 7, much longer to get that second one down, but it does allow you to shift focus differently in terms of defense.
It's getting pretty tense up here. Swabs makes an aggressive rotation, able to get the dodge there. If that was half a second later, that might have been one dead LFM. But as you were talking about with the interesting Knights versus Giants, the whole rotation around it here, looks like LFM was comfortable taking the Giants and making the transition up to get an easy clear onto the Knights. Likely to pick up a stalled Knight camp for themselves, which will provide vision control over I itself, which is very significant when looking towards the victor over that first Shrine fight. Knight, Root, and Stormbolt there kind of thrown onto Fury. But it's just going to kind of force cooldowns, at least for now.
And now for Simplicity, they have to decide on where their rotation lies. They have very good clear in the form of Jaina. Even through the spell armor that the mage provides in that Knight camp, Jaina can get through that pretty quickly. And so that does allow the defense, but they also have to consider what they want to do with their Siege Giants. And it looks like they have a clear thought process. Is if they time this now, they can defend that top lane, also have the global in the bottom, plus the Siege Giants pushing. So Simplicity with a very early game plan that seems to be taking place very effectively.
And the counterplay for LFM in the situation goes, okay, we are going to lose the siege on bottom significantly because of the Dahaka mismatch, things of the like, and we're capturing the Knight camp. So what that means is pressure top as soon as possible. Capture top shrine as soon as they can, and the fact that Dark Chimera is not already starting the channel would say that's a little bit too slow there. And then control top lane temporarily with vision control long enough to be able to gain a majority of these shots, and then gain a majority of the shots through mid, then zone off the bottom with Urel in the downtime. It's going according to plan for now. Question is, will it continue to do so? Because theirs requires a lot more advantage there. As you see the Stormbolt come in, nice knockback. Drag is still available though for Zuna, I believe. He's not going to pull it yet.
Ooh, Hosty, he's like, guys, I got to get this knockback. Does get the knockback just in time. Jaina ended up prioritizing that damage over to clear up that Knight camp. So not giving up too much damage on that fort wall, but they have turned their attention now towards the middle temple. Look to re-engage with the top. If we get a response out of that mid, Dahaka could potentially brush stock up to this top lane and maybe try and take a fight.
But Urel now making the rotation up is now kind of pulled away towards the bottom half. So I would say LFM, for the most part, did a very good job, except for this next window where they gave up a lot of those shots throughout mid over to Zuna. They're onto the Dahaka, which has now set them slightly behind over what they would have wanted out of this earlier stages. K1 Pro, though, waiting in the wakes there, questioning if he wants to move up for a kill there. Ends up burning the Blizzard, showing that that is about the last of the skirmishing opportunities. Huge root there. Figgy with a massive flank there. The tree buys a bit of that damage, but Tiger JK ends up using the regrowth, throws down the Moonfire, and ends up lying victim to LFM there. Shots on mid being contested between Dahaka and Urel. Urel getting the upper hand there over Zuna. Great fight there from LFM.
Yeah, you could really see Zuna. He wanted to get 7 off that mid wave and hope that the structures would go down via the top temple. They were unable to do so. I think if he had got 7 in the middle of that, then they could have looked for the fight. Because you think about the power spike of a Jaina at level 7, that cooldown reduction on your poke, on your Q there is so insanely strong. And then, of course, Dahaka with Feeding Frenzy. You could have had playmaking potential, but they were just behind in that moment, so LFM able to turn it around.
And J-Hal, like, looking back at that Shrine phase from LFM, you know, painting what Simplicity was looking to do and then knowing what LFM was looking to make happen, outside of, I would say there's 5 to 10 seconds of shots being controlled by Simplicity that shouldn't have, where they should have controlled one of those 2. Root attempt here out on the Hosty, but he'll be able to make it out. Stormbolt in response, along with the Root, and Hanzo out too far. LFM here end up going down. Great job there from Simplicity, realizing that they're out a little bit too far, and that's part of that reliable DPS I was talking about between the Hanzo Li Ming. They have a lot of burst as long as they're next to walls.
That is insane damage. I mean, anybody gets caught in that, and you're going down. I mean, outside of maybe Yorel post level 10, even ETC, if he steps in there, if he wants it, he can get it. You can rest assured Simplicity willing to dish it out.
Ridiculous amount of damage there between that setup between Ace in the hole there at level 1 and then Jaina with the constant slows. LFM, though, looking to do their best on other parts of the battleground where the night camp is picked up for Simplicity. Say that with the wave clear, not wave clear, excuse me, with the global advantage into their favor, at least for now. It's going to demand some kind of answer here. It's a little bit early on that capture. I would have liked to see it a little bit later, knowing that we have bottom shots spawning inevitably. If the only way you make up for this kind of rotation is if you're going to send Brushdock down below right now with the Giants and look for a double Giant or a huge amount of siege control on the bottom half of the battleground. So we'll see if that's the thought process here for Simplicity.
But one thing's for sure, with LFM keeping ETC in the top lane, should more than likely be stage dive, all things considered. So for Simplicity, they'll get some structure damage down here in the bot lane as their wave plus siege giants will push in. Just a moment that they'll have before LFM picks up level 10 for themselves. I think that Simplicity might get that top one.
Oh my goodness, that Lornado is a fraction of a pixel to the right. That is going to be a dead Jimmy. But Hosi ends up surviving there. Lornado down, got to be on cooldown for another 29 seconds. ETC and Dahaka yet to be able to show themselves here towards the bottom lane as King Caffeine trying to thwart off Swabs here. So he's got the potions over the wall there from Chimera.
Here we go. See whose global is going to be used first. Here comes Dahaka. He's going to brush stalk in. Figgy continuing. As you can see, he actually put the magic missiles in the bush, making to see if that's where brush stalk was. Figgy, he's going to get stunned. Down comes the stage dive. The root's going to be in return, as well as the Twilight Dream Ring of Frost. They are locking him down. ETC goes down. Welcome to the party. Come and dive right into this circle of death that Simplicity put out welcoming.
Yeah, Swab's unable to kite out there any farther as well. And with that opener, Simplicity 2 for nothing in their favor, and a lot of shots going to be picked up down below. Keep in mind that they have experience on reserve there with that top fort being enabled through that night camp that they have set up over that shrine fight. They put themselves in a very grand position to be able to pick up a double fort. So LFM here, even though they are keeping up with experience for now, the structures tell a different tale.
The ETC stage dive, this is one of the problems that ETC has, especially against the likes of a Malfurion or even a Deckard, is that stage dive is not fast. So you put down that giant bullseye, Malfurion throws a circle right in there. Jaina's like, well, I got a circle too. Mine has a hole in it, so I'm just going to put down this donut. But this donut gobbled up the health bar of ETC, and that just... You're asking for it. Every single time that happens, I think at this point you've got to see, are roots going down? Is Malfurion holding roots? And if you don't have that answer, it is risky every single time we see stage dive.
It's going to be very important, I think, to keep an eye on Chimera, because I think it's now his responsibility to be able to deal with the Ring of Frost and the Twilight Dream, because we know how these team fights are going to be approached, right? Stage Dive is going to answer at some point to the global matchup, and then likely you're going to see that overcommitment to the team fight by the Brushstock because it has less initiation capabilities than LFM. And when that happens, Simplicity is going to funnel in. We see them funnel in for a Twilight and a Ring of Frost the last time. It works out this time. That is where the Lornado and the Scroll Ceiling need to be used to be able to get a kind of counter momentum towards that fight. Dragon's Arrow could be something they rely on as well, but the biggest thing is Ring of Frost and Twilight Dream cannot go in the same place in very short time frame. And LFM really be able to rely on any sort of a team fight unless it's only hitting Yorel. That's the only way I see them surviving.
Yeah, Ardent Defender, obviously 2-minute cooldown, but still you save it for those moments. It's hard to get the takedown. Everybody else will undoubtedly be a target. Double Temple phase coming in next here as it's going to be mid-bot. Does make it trickier for anybody to get any type of cheeky boss play around this. So if we get a neutral trade, this definitely is in favor of Simplicity. And since they have the global, very curious how LFM will approach this. I'm also kind of curious on this approach because generally I like the bot temple here. I mean, yes, this temple will get down the mid, but then that bot lane, you start to open up the bot lane, get control. It always seems that's the more significant amount of control that we get.
Hold up here for a moment. There goes the Lornado usage. Drag is going to land onto Yorel. Ardent Defender already popped along with the stage dive onto the backline. Tiger JK is there with the roots. He actually interrupted the Twilight Dream, but the Ring of Frost already has the damage. That is solo Jaina damage, ladies and gentlemen. Get the one shot there On to ETC. Dot Khmer trying to get the retreat, but with that Dwarf Toss, a Stormbolt actually is whiffing. Don't know if it's going to matter as the Roots go down 2-0 in favor of Simplicity.
Fury is going to have a tough game. Look, I got no other ways of putting it, but every single time that stage dive is coming in, there's some roots, and there's a ring, and, well, you know what?
Beef. It's what's for dinner. That's the process.
All day, every day. I'm a chicken guy, but, you know, you serve up beef on a platter like that, I'll take it all day.
You're like a Chick-fil-A cow, aren't you?
Oh, my goodness. You have no idea. It's almost a problem at this point. It's bad when you go fast food place and they know you by first name. They don't even ask. They don't even ask for it anymore.
That's just because you're freakishly tall, man. That's not your frequency. I hate to break it to
I'm in a car, man.
You stick out
sitting
like a
down.
Sore thumb.
I'm still sitting down.
Simplicity with these shots on bottom, about to round the 16 talent tier. LFM lost that last window, it felt like, for even footing initiation, and now it is just how can they stop the bleeding? Can they stop the opportunity around the boss? Boss capabilities is, or at least, you know, race gate opportunities in favor of LFM, even though they're down the talent tier thanks to the Hanzo. Invade over the Giants, though, not going to be given for free here.
Yeah, no 16 talent tier, so no risk of Fury and the stage dive coming in there as he's dealing with the camp on the top lane. But for Simplicity, really curious on the next temple. If it's solo temple phase, then see if they can play around it. Use that global, use that macro control that they have. That's going to be their best chance. If it's double temple phase, then it's definitely in favor of Simplicity, but it is going to be directly in the middle. LFM need to pick up 16 somewhere in the middle of that. Just curious if Simplicity is going to have that wherewithal within them to get that macro control around this global. They have the siege camp that just spawned as well, and Simplicity, actually, they're looking to get control through the boss.
Pretty clever play there, and the fact that Zuno was able to identify that 3 people were up on the top half of the battleground just willing to deal with him alone. Hanzo is still on that camp at the night camp, but he's not going to capture it, so they don't know. Brush Talk has already come in along with the Stormbolt and the Isolation. Boss Slam coming through. Dragon's Arrow only lands onto 1. The Lornado goes down, swaps along with the stage dive here onto the point. Twilight Dream actually gets interrupted there. Look at that penetrating round. Knocks off 2 members off of the boss here. 1-0 here in favor of Simplicity as the boss looks to get picked up. Simplicity pick it up for themselves. Another victim there for LFM. And it looks like this might be all she wrote there. 3 members of LFM, live victim, and a boss marching through bot.
Yeah, and there's not much left because they were able to control the majority of that last temple phase through those team fights. Now this boss makes its way directly to the keep. They're not willing to go towards that temple just yet, which means that they're going to move forward, posture up, see if they can maybe end the game right here, right now. King Caffeine, I was going to say, it's all about him making that dive in. Unable to complete that, but this boss still very healthy as they make their way to the core.
Yeah, they're going to go ahead and make this march. Hanzo not up for 7 seconds. Dragon's Arrow not available for another 13. Simplicity doing work when it comes to the shielding for now. Hosey is going to be the members that LFM have to focus on. Fury lands the power slide, 70% and counting there. Not enough damage done onto the boss. And Simplicity fight and bite back here in game 3 and take a lead in this series 2-1.
ETC, man, just he has a tough time in North American meta. I think he's a very narrow niche hero. I think maybe a Garrosh counter for just the constant knockbacks, but outside of that stage dive, it's hard. There's way too many interrupts for Mosh Pit anymore. ETC just so difficult in that situation, but Simplicity, I mean, credit to them. I mean, they just sat on stage dive. Welcome to the fight. Here's a root, here's a Ring of Frost, and they exploded him every single time. Every time.
Yeah, I think you're highlighting not only some of the maybe struggles of Fury there onto the ECC, but also for me, the compliments of having K1 Pro back on a Jaina, and moving over towards some of his more classic heroes, because again, that one fight where really the team fight was just, it was not even close. It was the moment where Simplicity was gaining the upper hand. There was a full interrupt on Twilight Dream. It was a perfectly timed face mount from Fury, almost everything he could do in that situation. And Jaina still, with Icy Veins, keep in mind, not even with the chill and Roots opportunity post 16, was just like, yeah, I can kill him. It's all good. Just wiped him. And so that shows, I think, not only, again, the synergy and kind of outplay on Simplicity's end, but maybe some of the reasons he's kind of walking his way out of the meta.
Not in North America, apparently. I mean, day number 1, he's coming out. I think it might start to shift. I think he's, again, more situational hero. But it was weird because, you know, I'm trying to break it down, right? You look at one part of the fight, but then there's a whole nother part of the fight going on. Zuna straight up zoned everybody out. Him and King Caffeine going in on Murd, and they sat on that back line. There was no way those Leeming skill shots were getting in. They couldn't get the takedowns on that. Hanzo having trouble to find the angles when you have so much pressure in your face. But the fact that you're able to instantly blow up a tank on the other side and completely deny any aggression at all, I mean, that was very well played by Simplicity in those team fights. And yes, I think the plays were definitely there, but you got to give credit to King Caffeine and Zuna getting that counter aggression there. And they're like, that's fine. Like, you guys take care of this. We'll take care of this. And if they want to stick around after this, then you can kill them too. But the rest of LFM's like, all right, we're done. We're sorry.
Yeah.
They just walked away.
Yeah, the only way, I think they maybe could recover from that in the middle of the game when things kind of got sour is, and by no means do I go, like, should this player identify this? This is more of like the only way I see this game turning around. It would be, again, Chimera. He has to be able to hit a Lornado with the stage dive. They have to be using synergy so that you get the initiation demanded, but you don't get the ETC into a one-shot situation and somehow, you know, make something happen there, or at least get such a high-impact Lornado opener that the stage dive is just bringing a body there rather than having kind of impact to the play. And again, I don't put that on Dark Chimera by any means as much as I do just great play from Simplicity. And suddenly it makes the series that much harder because, again, I feel like games 1 and 2, I was looking at LFM. I was like, those should have been yours, and now they're on the back foot.
What if we had ETC changed to where if you hit the center of the stage dive, you get like this huge stun, the outer ring gets a slow?
Yeah, we'll call it Sulfurous ETC Smash.
You know what? I'm totally in for that. I mean, now all we need is for a giant power slide to create a lava wave behind it. It's like shredding, right? I think he has one like aggressive shredding already.
Yeah.
But just it creates a wake.
Yeah, like an Echo Pedal that just goes and just launches through everything and kills all the minions and be one shot. That'd be cool.
I almost want to keep going down this rabbit hole.
Let's talk about his passive.
Do you miss his old one?
Please stop. Please.
Do you miss his old one?
No.
His old one though. Get that extra attack speed. They're like, look, we're sorry. We'll give you extra attack speed by yourself. It's still there. Either way, first pick has won every single game so far. As you know, first pick, win, win, win. And now it's going to be LFM. Can they change it up? Do they try and take map pick this time around as they gave it up last time, or are they willing to concede and give that over? Again, Infernal Shrines was the one battleground in their previous series, I think week 4, that Simplicity was able to take a map. Outside of that, it was a 3-1 series for LFM. So I am curious if first pick does have that high priority for both these teams, and if so, where will the other team be willing to take us?
I currently don't know. I would like to see a macro-focused battleground. If I'm LFM, I go, that's the weakest point of Simplicity. That's where I can take them out, so find a way to be able to make that happen. Like, Tomb is the first thing that comes to my brain, and I'd be like, find a way to get that out macro and control. But again, if we look at Dragonshire, how they play with their draft, it's making it difficult because I feel like we have moments where we saw LFM, and they had really good, again, like the night camp rotation. That was them being very, very smart with the decision making, even though it's not very clear at first glance. They are very well thought through on their Sky Temple play. But then the failure to play to their compositional advantages on Dragonshire make it go like, I don't know if I want to map as confusing as Tomb can be.